Many believe that daily action is a privilege reserved for the highly motivated, the fearless, or those who have perfect conditions. They think consistency comes from luck, talent, or external inspiration, but that is not the case. Daily action is built, not gifted, one small choice at a time. Napoleon Hill, have learned that real progress doesn't start when motivation strikes, but when I move forward, even if every part of me resists, acting without comfort, without certainty, without ideal conditions. Because growth doesn't depend on perfect timing, it depends on my willingness to show up every single day. Waiting for motivation is a trap. Many believe they must feel a sudden surge of inspiration before they can begin. They wait for a special moment, for the perfect mood, for the elusive spark that will finally push them into action. The truth is, that moment rarely comes on its own. Motivation is not a gift that arrives at your doorstep. It is something you create by moving forward. This backwards thinking keeps countless people trapped in endless preparation. They organize their workspace again and again. They read one more book about their craft. They make elaborate plans that never see daylight. All the while, they convince themselves they are making progress when they are simply avoiding the uncomfortable truth. They must begin before they feel ready. When you take the first step, even if small, you set a chain of events in motion. That simple act tells your mind and body, we are already on the path. Your brain responds to action by releasing chemicals that sharpen focus and increase energy. Your muscles warm up and remember their purpose. Your thoughts align with your movements, creating a natural rhythm that pulls you deeper into the work. The most accomplished people throughout history understood this secret. They did not spend their mornings waiting to feel ready. They began regardless of how they felt. The blacksmith did not wait for inspiration to strike iron. The farmer did not delay planting until the perfect mood arrived. The merchant did not postpone his journey until he felt completely prepared. They knew that action itself would provide what they needed, and often, once they had started, the energy and drive they were waiting for arrived in abundance. The blacksmith found his rhythm in the sound of hammer on metal. The farmer discovered satisfaction in the orderly rows of planted seed. The merchant felt excitement build with each mile traveled toward his destination. This principle works because our bodies and minds are designed to respond to movement. When we remain still, everything within us grows still as well. Our blood moves slowly, our thoughts become sluggish, and our spirit grows heavy. But the moment we act, everything awakens. Our heart beats faster, our breathing deepens, and our mind begins to race with possibilities. To harness this truth, prepare your surroundings so that starting feels effortless. Have your tools ready before you need them. Keep your workspace clean and organized. Place everything within easy reach. Know exactly what your first action will be, no matter how small. Make the path from thought to action as smooth as possible. Don't set the bar so high that beginning feels impossible. If you want to write a book, start by writing one sentence. If you dream of building furniture, begin by selecting the wood. If you wish to learn a skill, practice for just 5 minutes. The goal is not to accomplish everything at once, but to break the spell of inaction. Henry Ford once challenged his engineers with what seemed an impossible task: to design an 8-cylinder engine cast in a single block. The engineers quickly declared it could not be done. Months went by without a solution, and every technical approach failed. Most people would have stopped, waiting for new knowledge or perfect conditions before trying again. But Ford refused to accept delay as an option. He gave a simple order: keep working until you succeed. With no guarantee of progress and no clear path forward, the team persisted. They experimented, adjusted, and learned from each failed attempt. Eventually, the breakthrough came, and the V8 engine was born. It became a milestone in automotive history, not because the perfect plan appeared first, but because Ford and his team acted despite uncertainty. Their story proves that consistent action, even without clarity, is the true driver of innovation and success. 2, big goals can paralyze you. It's common to believe that thinking only in grand visions is the way to succeed. We admire those who speak of massive goals and sweeping changes. We think that keeping our eyes fixed on the biggest prize will pull us forward with unstoppable force. Yet this approach often does the opposite of what we intend. Staring at a mountain without seeing the path can freeze you in place. When you focus only on how far you have to go, the distance becomes overwhelming. Your mind fills with doubt about your abilities. You begin to question whether the goal is even possible. The gap between where you are and where you want to be seems too wide to cross. This happens because our minds struggle to process enormous tasks. We cannot easily imagine all the work required to reach a distant goal. The complexity confuses us, and confusion leads to delay. We know we should start, but we do not know where to begin, so we wait for clarity that never comes, or we attempt to do everything at once and quickly burn out. Great dreams are important, but they must be broken into clear, simple steps. Dreams give us direction and purpose. They remind us why we are willing to work hard and make sacrifices. But dreams alone cannot carry us to success. They must be transformed into specific actions we can take today, this week, this month. When you divide a large goal into smaller pieces, several things happen. First, you can see exactly what needs to be done. Instead of a vague wish, you have a concrete plan. Second, each small step feels manageable. You know you can complete it because it is not too big or complicated. Third, you can measure your progress. You can point to what you have finished and feel the satisfaction of moving forward. Focusing on the small task before you builds confidence and progress. Each time you complete a step, you prove to yourself that you are capable. Your mind begins to believe that the larger goal is possible because you have evidence of your ability to advance. This confidence makes the next step easier to take. Progress also creates momentum. When you see yourself moving forward, you naturally want to continue. The success of completing small tasks becomes addictive. You begin to look forward to checking items off your list. This momentum carries you through difficult days. When motivation runs low, small steps also allow you to learn as you go. You discover what works and what does not. You develop skills you did not know you needed. You find shortcuts and better methods. This learning would be impossible if you tried to leap directly to your final goal. Imagine a man who wished to climb the tallest peak in his region. The mountain rose so high that clouds often hid its summit. Many who looked at it felt discouraged before they even began. But this man chose a different approach. Instead of dwelling on the summit and how impossible it seemed, he decided to take one small trek each day. On the first day, he walked to the base of the mountain. On the second day, he climbed just a few hundred steps up the slope. Each day, he went a little farther than the day before. Some days the weather was poor, so he rested. Other days he felt strong and covered more ground. He never worried about reaching the top. He only focused on the path directly in front of his feet. He watched for loose rocks that might cause him to stumble. He noticed which routes were easier to climb. He learned to read the weather and choose the best times to advance. Months later, he stood at the top of that impossible mountain. People asked him how he conquered such a challenging peak. His answer was simple. He concentrated on the step in front of him, not the whole journey. 3, discipline beats willpower every time. Many think success relies on constant inner strength. They believe that achieving their goals requires an endless supply of determination and mental toughness. They imagine successful people as having superhuman resolve, never wavering in their commitment, never feeling tired or discouraged. This belief leads them to rely entirely on willpower to push through challenges and maintain their effort. But willpower is like a muscle that grows tired with use. In the morning, you might feel strong enough to resist temptation and stick to your plans. By evening, after a day of making decisions and fighting distractions, that same strength feels depleted. You find yourself giving in to impulses you easily resisted hours earlier. You eat the food you promised to avoid, skip the exercise you planned to do, or abandon the project you were determined to finish. This cycle repeats itself endlessly. You start each week with renewed determination, only to watch it crumble under the weight of daily life. You blame yourself for lacking character or commitment. You wonder why others seem to succeed effortlessly while you struggle to maintain basic habits. The truth is, you are fighting the wrong battle. In reality, willpower fades. Discipline is built to last. While willpower depends on how you feel in the moment, discipline operates independently of your emotions. It does not care whether you are excited or bored, energetic or exhausted, confident or doubtful. Discipline simply moves you forward because that is what you have trained it to do. Discipline is the habit of acting without daily debate, the steady rhythm that carries you forward. Instead of relying on motivation to push you into action, discipline makes certain behaviors automatic. You do not waste energy deciding whether to act. You do not negotiate with yourself about timing or intensity. You simply do what needs to be done because that is your established pattern. This automation saves tremendous mental energy. Every decision you avoid making preserves your willpower for more important choices. When exercise happens automatically at the same time each day, you do not spend energy debating whether to work out. When writing becomes as routine as brushing your teeth, you do not exhaust yourself trying to find inspiration. The action occurs naturally, leaving your mind free to focus on quality and improvement. To build discipline, link an action to a familiar routine so it becomes second nature. Choose something you already do consistently and attach your new habit directly to it. This connection creates a trigger that reminds you to act and makes the new behavior feel like a natural extension of something you already do well. The key is to make the connection specific and immediate. Instead of saying you will exercise sometime in the morning, decide you will exercise immediately after you finish breakfast. Instead of planning to read more books, choose to read for 10 minutes right before you go to bed. The more precise the connection, the more likely it is to stick. Imagine a woman who wished to practice the violin but struggled to find time in her busy schedule. She tried practicing whenever she felt motivated, but days would pass without her touching the instrument. She tried setting aside evening time, but after long days at work, she often felt too tired to concentrate. Finally, she decided to link violin practice to her morning routine. She began playing each morning immediately after breakfast, while her mind was still fresh and her home was quiet. At first, she had to remind herself to pick up the instrument, but within a few weeks, something remarkable happened. The practice became automatic. She would finish eating, clear her dishes, and naturally reach for her violin. No decisions, no arguments with herself, no searching for motivation, just the daily habit shaping her skill one morning at a time. Within months, her playing had improved dramatically, not through bursts of intense effort, but through the steady power of discipline. For perfection is the enemy of progress. Some believe they must wait until everything is flawless before they begin. They spend weeks preparing their workspace, months gathering the perfect tools, and years studying every aspect of their chosen field. They tell themselves they are being thorough and responsible. They convince themselves that proper preparation will guarantee success and save them from embarrassment. But this approach contains a fatal flaw. Perfection is a moving target that retreats as you approach it. The more you learn about any subject, the more you realize how much you do not know. The standards you set for yourself grow higher as your understanding deepens. What seemed like adequate preparation yesterday feels insufficient today. This cycle can continue indefinitely, keeping you trapped in endless preparation while others move ahead. This hesitation kills momentum before it can build. Momentum is like a river that grows stronger as it flows, but it must start somewhere, even as a tiny stream. When you delay action while waiting for perfect conditions, you prevent that stream from ever forming. Your energy stagnates instead of building. Your excitement fades instead of growing. Your skills remain theoretical instead of practical. Meanwhile, opportunities pass by. The market changes, competitors emerge, or your life circumstances shift in ways that make your goal harder to pursue. Time does not wait for you to feel ready. The world continues moving whether you participate or not. Progress begins with imperfect attempts refined along the way. Every master craftsman started by creating crude, clumsy work. Every great leader began by making awkward speeches to small groups. Every successful business owner started with products or services that had obvious flaws. None of them waited until they could produce perfection from the beginning. Instead, they understood that improvement comes through doing, not through thinking about doing. Each imperfect attempt teaches lessons that cannot be learned any other way. You discover which techniques work and which do not. You find problems you never anticipated and solutions you never considered. You develop instincts that only come through direct experience. This learning process accelerates as you continue. Your second attempt will be better than your first, not because you spent more time preparing, but because you learned from actually trying. Your 10th attempt will be better than your second for the same reason. Each cycle of action and reflection builds upon the last, creating rapid improvement that surpasses what careful planning alone could achieve. Conditions are rarely perfect. Growth comes from starting despite them. There will always be something missing, some tool you wish you had, some skill you wish you possessed, some circumstance you wish were different. Successful people do not wait for these obstacles to disappear. They begin working around them, often discovering that the obstacles were less important than they seemed. Set a rule to begin badly, knowing you will improve. Give yourself permission to produce work that does not meet your ultimate standards. Accept that your first efforts will be clumsy and incomplete. This acceptance removes the pressure that keeps you frozen in place. When you know you are allowed to fail, you become free to try. Picture an aspiring writer who feared his first story would be poor. He had read countless books by master authors and felt intimidated by their skill. He worried that his own writing would seem childish by comparison. For months, he outlined and planned, but never wrote a single page. Finally, tired of his own excuses, he made a decision. He would write one terrible story, accepting that it would be full of flaws. He sat down and wrote it anyway, ignoring his inner critic. The story was indeed poor, just as he had feared. But something unexpected happened when he finished it. He could see exactly what was wrong and how to fix it. He wrote a second story, then a third. Each one taught him something new. He learned from the flaws, studied successful techniques, and gradually developed his own voice. Over time, he produced work far beyond what he had imagined possible when he started. None of it would have happened if he had continued waiting to write the perfect first story. 5, you don't need huge time blocks. Most people postpone action until they can set aside hours of uninterrupted time. They look at their packed schedules and convince themselves that meaningful work requires large blocks of focus. They wait for weekends, vacations, or that mythical future period when life will slow down and grant them the luxury of extended concentration. They believe progress requires grand sessions of effort. In their minds, true accomplishment happens only during marathon work periods where they can dive deep and emerge with significant results. Anything less feels like a waste of time, not worth the effort of starting. They would rather do nothing than do something small. This thinking creates a dangerous trap. Perfect conditions rarely appear on their own. Life has a way of filling every available moment with urgent demands, unexpected problems, and necessary tasks. The free afternoon you planned gets consumed by family obligations. The quiet weekend morning gets interrupted by household repairs. The vacation time you set aside for your project gets claimed by rest and recovery from daily stress. Yet days slip by without those perfect conditions appearing, and nothing is accomplished. Weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and the important work remains undone. The weight of unfulfilled intentions grows heavier, creating guilt and frustration that makes starting even more difficult. In truth, steady minutes each day often outpace rare bursts of long work. This seems impossible when you first consider it. How can 15 minutes of daily effort compete with an 8-hour work session? The mathematics appear to favor the intensive approach. But mathematics alone does not tell the complete story. Long work sessions happen rarely, while short daily sessions happen consistently. Consistency creates momentum that intensive bursts cannot match. When you work a little each day, you stay connected to your project. Your mind continues processing ideas even when you are not actively working. Problems that seemed difficult yesterday often have obvious solutions today because your subconscious has been working on them. Daily sessions also prevent the need to restart repeatedly. When you return to a project after weeks away, you must spend time remembering where you left off, reviewing what you have done, and rebuilding your mental model of the work. This restart cost can consume much of your available time. With daily sessions, you eliminate this waste and maintain forward momentum. Small actions repeated faithfully build astonishing results. A drop of water may seem powerless Yet it can carve a path through stone given enough time. The force of any single drop is negligible, but the cumulative effect of millions of drops, each following the same path, creates changes that seem impossible. This principle applies to every area of human effort. Reading one page each day will complete several books in a year. Writing one paragraph daily will produce articles, stories, or books. Practicing a skill for 10 minutes each day will develop competence that surprises you. Learning 5 new words in another language daily will build vocabulary faster than cramming sessions. Begin with the time you have, even if it feels too small to matter. Look at your daily schedule and find the gaps that already exist. The 10 minutes between finishing breakfast and leaving for work, the quarter hour before bed when you usually waste time, the brief period while waiting for others to arrive at a meeting. These moments feel insignificant because we judge them individually rather than cumulatively. But over weeks and months, these moments will pile into something substantial. The compound effect of small efforts creates results that seem disproportionate to the daily investment. Imagine a farmer who wished to build a stone wall along his field. The wall needed to be strong enough to keep livestock contained and tall enough to mark clear boundaries. It was a significant project that would require moving hundreds of heavy stones and careful placement to ensure stability. His days were busy with the demands of farming. Crops needed tending, animals required care, and equipment needed maintenance. He could never spare a full day for wall building, and he began to think the project was impossible given his schedule. Finally, he decided to use a different approach. Each morning before beginning his regular farm work, he would carry and place just a few stones. Sometimes he managed only 2 or 3 stones. On good days, he placed 5 or 6. It seemed slow at first, and he worried the wall would never be finished at such a pace. But one season later, the wall stood strong and complete. The size of his daily effort had mattered less than the consistency of it. Use the minutes you have, and you will discover they hold more power than you ever imagined. 7. Failing is a required step. Some see failure as the end, a sign they are not meant for the path they chose. When their first business loses money, they conclude they lack the skills for commerce. When their initial attempt at learning a craft produces poor results, they decide they have no talent for that work. When their early efforts at leadership meet resistance, they believe they are not born to guide others. This view treats failure as a final judgment, a verdict that cannot be appealed or overturned. It assumes that success should come easily to those who are meant to achieve it, and that struggle indicates you are pursuing the wrong goal. This thinking causes people to abandon worthwhile pursuits at the first sign of difficulty. But failure is not a closed door, it is a teacher. Each misstep offers information that no amount of planning can provide. Books can tell you the theory behind success, but only direct experience can show you how that theory applies to your specific situation. Only by trying and failing can you discover the gap between what you think you know and what you actually understand. This information is invaluable because it is specific to your circumstances, your strengths, and your weaknesses. A general rule might not work for your particular case, but failure will show you exactly where the rule breaks down and what adjustments you need to make. It reveals problems you never anticipated and solutions you never considered. Those who succeed most often have also failed the most, for they have tried more, learned more, and adjusted more. This seems backwards to people who believe success comes from avoiding mistakes. They think successful people must be naturally gifted or exceptionally lucky. They do not see the long history of failures that taught these successful people what they needed to know. If you study any great achievement, you will find a trail of failed attempts leading up to it. The successful inventor tried dozens of designs that did not work before finding one that did. The master craftsman produced countless flawed pieces before creating his masterworks. The wise leader made many poor decisions before developing sound judgment. Each failure served as a stepping stone to eventual success. Without those early mistakes, the later achievements would have been impossible. The failures were not obstacles to overcome, but necessary parts of the learning process. Think of a blacksmith forging a new type of blade. He has an idea for a weapon that will be lighter than existing swords, but just as strong. He begins with confidence, drawing on years of experience with traditional techniques. His first attempt may crack during the cooling process, split right down the middle despite his careful work. The second blade may bend when he tests its flexibility, proving too soft for practical use. The third may hold its shape but dull too quickly when used, losing its edge after just a few strikes. Each failure frustrates him, but it also teaches him something vital. The cracked blade shows him that his heating technique needs adjustment. The bent blade reveals that his timing during the cooling process is wrong. The dull blade demonstrates that his choice of materials needs refinement. Yet with each flawed blade, he learns what to change, how to heat the metal to just the right temperature, how to strike it with precisely the right force, how to temper it so it holds both strength and sharpness. He adjusts his methods based on what each failure taught him. He experiments with different approaches, always building on the lessons from previous attempts. In time, through this process of failure and learning, he produces a weapon of unmatched strength and beauty. The blade holds its edge through countless battles, flexes without breaking under stress, and becomes legendary among warriors. None of this would have been possible without the failures that taught him his craft. Those who fear failure miss the lessons it offers. They avoid taking risks that might lead to mistakes, but in doing so, they also avoid the learning that comes from those mistakes. They stay safe but never grow. They preserve their ego, but sacrifice their potential. Treat each setback not as proof you should quit, but as proof you are in the process of learning what works. The road to mastery is paved with mistakes you learn from, not with perfect attempts that taught you nothing. 8, overthinking destroys momentum. Most people believe the more they think about something, the more prepared they will be. They spend hours analyzing every angle, considering each possible outcome, and trying to predict how events might unfold. They create detailed plans that account for dozens of scenarios. They research extensively, gathering facts and opinions from every available source. This approach feels productive because mental effort requires energy and time. The person doing all this thinking feels busy and engaged with their goal. They tell themselves they are making progress towards success by thinking through all the possibilities. They convince themselves that thorough preparation will guarantee better results. But thinking without acting can become a cage. The more you analyze a situation, the more complex it appears. Simple decisions become complicated as you discover new factors to consider. Straightforward actions seem risky as you imagine everything that could go wrong. What started as helpful preparation transforms into paralyzing hesitation. This happens because thinking alone has no natural endpoint. You can always find one more factor to consider, one more risk to evaluate, one more expert opinion to seek. The planning phase can expand to fill whatever time you give it, growing larger and more detailed without ever reaching a satisfying conclusion. Endless what-ifs and maybes keep you from taking the very step that would bring clarity. Your mind generates scenario after scenario, each requiring its own analysis and preparation. You worry about problems that might never occur and prepare for situations that might never arise. Meanwhile, the simple action that would answer most of your questions remains untaken. The mind craves certainty, yet certainty often comes only after you begin. This creates an impossible situation. You want to know how things will turn out before you start, but you cannot know how things will turn out until you have started. The information you seek exists only on the other side of action. Most of the questions that torment you during the planning phase resolve themselves quickly once you begin moving. Problems that seemed enormous in your imagination turn out to be manageable in reality. Solutions that you could never have planned for present themselves naturally as you work. The path forward becomes clear, not through thinking, but through taking steps. Spending too long weighing every option drains your energy before you have moved an inch. Decision-making is mentally exhausting work. The longer you spend in the planning phase, the less energy you have left for the execution phase. You can arrive at the starting line already tired from all the preparation, with little enthusiasm remaining for the actual work. This energy drain also affects your confidence. The more time you spend imagining potential problems, the more worried and doubtful you become. What started as reasonable caution transforms into anxious avoidance. You begin to question not just your plan, but your ability to succeed at all. Imagine a merchant who wished to open a new stall in the market. He had saved enough money to rent space and purchase initial stock, and he had identified several products he thought would sell well. But instead of beginning, he decided to plan thoroughly to ensure success. He spent months considering every possible arrangement of his stall. He drew diagrams showing different ways to display his goods. He researched the best times of day to arrive, the optimal prices to charge, and the most effective ways to attract customers. He worried over what might go wrong: bad weather, poor sales, competition from other merchants, problems with suppliers. Meanwhile, his neighbor decided to enter the same market with a much simpler approach. With half the preparation, this neighbor rented a space, purchased some basic goods, and set up a simple stall. He began trading that very week, learning as he went. Within a month, something remarkable had happened. The neighbor, who had started quickly, now knew from direct experience what sold best and what did not. He had learned how to display goods to catch the eye, how to greet customers to make them feel welcome, and how to handle the dozens of small challenges that arise in daily trading. The first merchant was still planning, still worrying, still trying to prepare for every possibility. His neighbor had gained a month of real world education, while he had gained only more anxiety and uncertainty. Action sharpens understanding faster than thought alone. Every day of actual experience teaches you more than weeks of theoretical preparation. Plan enough to take the first step, then let movement teach you the rest. 9. Progress feels boring most days. Many expect the journey towards success to feel exciting each day. They imagine their pursuit will be filled with dramatic moments, sudden insights, and regular celebrations of progress. They picture themselves waking up each morning energized by passion, working with intense focus, and going to bed each night satisfied by obvious advancement toward their goals. They imagine constant breakthroughs and moments of triumph. In their minds, each week should bring a new milestone, each month should reveal dramatic improvement, and each season should mark a clear leap forward in their abilities. They expect to feel the thrill of discovery regularly, the satisfaction of mastering new skills frequently, and the joy of recognition from others consistently. This expectation sets them up for disappointment and confusion. When the reality of daily effort does not match their dramatic expectations, they begin to doubt whether they are on the right path. They wonder if they lack the natural talent that makes the journey exciting for others. They question whether their goal is worth pursuing if the daily work feels so unremarkable. But the truth is, most progress is made in quiet repetition, the kind that feels ordinary. The skills that impress others are built through thousands of small actions that would bore most observers. The achievements that seem sudden to outsiders actually result from years of patient, consistent effort that rarely felt dramatic to the person doing it. This ordinary work is invisible to those who only see the final result. They witness the polished performance, but not the countless hours of practice. They see the finished masterpiece, but not the daily sketches and failed attempts. They observe the confident expert, but not the uncertain beginner who showed up day after day, despite feeling unprepared. Great skills are formed not in flashes of brilliance, but in countless days of showing up and doing the work. The musician becomes masterful through daily scales, not through occasional inspired performances. The craftsman develops expertise through routine projects, not through rare moments of creative genius. The athlete builds strength through regular training, not through sporadic bursts of intense effort. This process can feel discouraging to those who expect constant excitement. The work often seems repetitive and mundane. You practice the same techniques over and over. You face similar challenges repeatedly. You make small improvements that are barely noticeable from day to day. The challenge is to value the process even when it feels unremarkable. You must find satisfaction in the work itself, not just in the distant goal. You must appreciate the subtle improvements that accumulate over time. You must trust that boring consistency will eventually produce extraordinary results. This requires a shift in how you measure success. Instead of looking for dramatic breakthroughs, you learn to notice gradual refinement. Instead of expecting constant excitement, you find contentment in steady progress. Instead of needing external validation, you develop internal appreciation for your commitment to the process. Picture a young athlete training for a long-distance race that would take place at the end of the season. He had natural ability, but he knew that talent alone would not be enough to compete against experienced runners. He would need to build the endurance and mental toughness that only come from months of dedicated preparation. Most mornings were the same, running the same roads through his village, feeling the same fatigue in his legs and lungs, enduring the same weather, whether it was hot, cold, or rainy. There were no cheering crowds to motivate him, no medals to inspire him, no music to energize him, just the sound of his own footsteps on dirt paths and stone streets. Many days the training felt tedious. His times improved so slowly that progress was barely measurable. His body ached from the repetitive stress. His mind grew bored with the unchanging routine. Friends invited him to more entertaining activities, and he sometimes wondered if he was wasting his youth on something that felt so ordinary. Yet each of those plain mornings built something valuable. His heart grew stronger, pumping blood more efficiently. His muscles adapted to sustained effort. His breathing became deeper and more controlled. His mind learned to push through discomfort and maintain focus when his body wanted to quit. When race day finally came, he lined up against runners who had trained at famous schools and won prestigious competitions. Many observers expected him to struggle against such experienced competitors. But as the race unfolded, something remarkable happened. He outpaced his rivals, not because of a single extraordinary day, but because of hundreds of ordinary ones. The plain days are where greatness is built. 10, accountability changes everything. Some believe they can rely on themselves alone, thinking discipline is enough to keep them on course. They make promises to themselves in moments of high motivation, setting ambitious goals and creating detailed plans. They believe their personal commitment will be sufficient to carry them through difficult periods when enthusiasm wanes and obstacles arise. This self-reliance feels noble and independent. They do not want to burden others with their goals or depend on external pressure to maintain their efforts. They prefer to succeed through their own strength of character, proving to themselves that they possess the inner resolve necessary for achievement. Yet human nature often seeks the easier path when no one is watching. When you are accountable only to yourself, it becomes easy to negotiate with your own standards. You can rationalize skipping today's work by promising to do twice as much tomorrow. You can lower your expectations when they become inconvenient. You can abandon your plan entirely and tell yourself you will start fresh next week or next month. This self-negotiation happens gradually and feels reasonable in the moment. You tell yourself that one missed day will not matter in the long run. You convince yourself that you deserve a break after your recent efforts. You decide that your original goal was too ambitious and that a more modest target would be wiser. These internal conversations become easier over time. Your mind grows skilled at creating justifications for avoiding work. What started as occasional flexibility becomes regular avoidance. The goals that once excited you begin to feel like burdens you imposed on yourself unfairly. Accountability, having someone aware of your goals, creates a weight of responsibility that makes it harder to give up. When another person knows what you intend to accomplish, your actions take on new meaning. You are no longer just letting yourself down. When you fail to follow through, you are disappointing someone who believed in your commitment and trusted your word. This external awareness changes how you think about your choices. The excuses that seem reasonable when you are alone feel weak when you imagine explaining them to someone else. The rationalizations that satisfy your private conscience sound hollow when you consider how they would appear to an observer. When another person expects you to act, you feel an unspoken agreement to follow through. This agreement carries social weight that pure self-discipline cannot match. You do not want to appear unreliable or weak to someone whose opinion you value. You do not want to break faith with someone who took time to learn about your goals and offer encouragement. This is why training alongside others, working within a team, or reporting progress to a mentor can transform consistency. The presence of others creates a structure that supports your efforts even when your personal motivation falters. You show up not just because you feel like working, but because others are counting on you to appear. The group dynamic also provides natural encouragement during difficult periods. When you see others struggling with similar challenges, you realize that your difficulties are normal rather than signs that you should quit. When you witness others pushing through resistance, you find inspiration to do the same. Imagine a man who wished to practice his craft daily, but often found excuses to delay. He was learning woodworking and had set up a small workshop in his home. His goal was to spend 1 hour each evening developing his skills, working on small projects that would gradually build his abilities. At first, his enthusiasm carried him forward. He looked forward to the quiet time in his workshop, the satisfaction of creating something with his hands, and the steady improvement in his technique. But as weeks passed, other demands began to interfere. Some evenings he felt tired from his regular work. Other nights, he had family obligations or household tasks that seemed more pressing. Soon he found himself skipping more evenings than he worked. He would promise himself that tomorrow would be different, but tomorrow often brought its own distraction. His tools gathered dust. His projects remained unfinished. His skills stagnated. Recognizing this pattern, he decided to join a small group of artisans who met each evening in a shared workshop space. The group included carpenters, metalworkers, and other craftsmen who gathered not for formal instruction, but simply to work alongside each other. Each person pursued their own projects while enjoying the company and occasional advice of others. The change was immediate and powerful. On days when he felt tired and would have normally stayed home, the thought of facing his peers empty-handed drove him to show up. He did not want to explain why he had made no progress or admit that he had spent his evening in idle activities instead of pursuing his stated goal. Weeks turned to months, and his skill grew steadily, not because he always felt eager to work, but because accountability made absence costlier than effort. 11. Environment shapes action more than willpower. Many people believe their success depends almost entirely on their internal strength, their discipline, determination, and ability to resist temptation. They think that as long as they have enough willpower, they can thrive in any environment, no matter how distracting or discouraging it might be. This belief leads them to ignore the powerful influence of their surroundings. They underestimate how much the people, objects, and situations around them either support or sabotage their goals. They imagine they can remain focused in a noisy room, eat healthy in a kitchen full of junk food, or stay motivated while surrounded by negative influences. The truth is, willpower is fragile when constantly under attack. Each temptation you face requires energy to resist, and that energy is limited. A single distraction might be manageable, but dozens of them, repeated day after day, slowly erode your ability to stay on track. The environment you choose can either remove these daily battles or multiply them. When your surroundings make the desired action the easiest option, you barely need to think about it. When your surroundings make the undesired action more difficult, you reduce the number of temptations you must resist. Consider how effortlessly habits form when the environment is aligned with your goals. If your workspace is clean, organized, and free from distractions, you naturally focus better. If your gym clothes and shoes are laid out by the door, you are far more likely to exercise in the morning. If healthy food is prepared and ready to eat, you are less likely to reach for snacks that undermine your health. The reverse is also true. An environment misaligned with your goals works against you constantly. If your phone is always within reach and full of apps designed to steal your attention, you will check it repeatedly, even when you want to focus. If your home is full of processed food, you will eat more of it, no matter how strong your intentions. If your friends or colleagues constantly complain and speak negatively, your own outlook will gradually become more pessimistic. Changing your environment often requires less effort than trying to fight it. Rearrange your surroundings so that the actions you want to take become easier and the actions you want to avoid become harder. Reduce friction for good habits and increase friction for bad ones. A man who wanted to practice playing the piano each evening struggled to stay consistent. He kept his instrument in a storage room at the back of his house, where it was hidden behind boxes and rarely in sight. Each time he thought about practicing, he remembered he would need to clear the space, set up the stool, and find his sheet music. These small steps seemed insignificant, but they created enough friction to make skipping practice the easier choice. One day, he decided to move the piano into his living room, placing it where he would pass by multiple times a day. He kept the stool in place and left his sheet music open to the next piece he wanted to learn. Suddenly, sitting down to play required almost no effort. He found himself practicing more often without consciously deciding to do so. The environment had removed the barriers. Your environment silently shapes your choices all day long. When you design it to support your goals, you free yourself from constant battles with temptation. You no longer need to summon willpower at every turn. You simply follow the path of least resistance, which now leads toward the life you want to create. 12. Momentum is easier to keep than to start. Many people underestimate the cost of stopping once they have begun. They assume they can pause their efforts for a while and then resume with little difficulty. They imagine they will pick up exactly where they left off, as if time away will have no effect on their skills, habits, or motivation. But momentum is fragile. Once broken, it requires far more energy to restart than it does to maintain. The very act of beginning again feels heavier because you have lost the rhythm that once carried you forward. You must rebuild not only the physical actions, but also the mental patterns that made those actions feel natural. Think of a train at rest. It takes enormous force to get it moving, but once in motion, it rolls forward with much less effort. A sudden stop wastes all the energy that was invested in building speed, and starting again demands the same heavy push as before. The same principle applies to your work, your habits, and your personal growth. When you are consistent, your habits work for you automatically. The decision to act is already made, the routine is established, and your body and mind expect the work to happen. Skipping a session may feel harmless in the moment, but it interrupts this smooth cycle. The next time you attempt the same task, you must overcome renewed resistance. Pausing can also erode your identity as the kind of person who does the work regularly. The more often you break your streak, the easier it becomes to see yourself as someone who occasionally works on the goal rather than someone who lives it daily. This shift in self-perception makes it harder to take action because you no longer feel aligned with the behavior you are trying to maintain. Even short breaks can cause surprising setbacks. Skills that once felt sharp grow dull. The mental clarity you had developed begins to fade. Your efficiency declines as you relearn what once felt automatic. Each of these losses makes restarting more frustrating, which in turn makes you more likely to procrastinate further. The simplest way to preserve momentum is to avoid stopping entirely. This does not mean you must work at full intensity every day. Light days can keep the habit alive when you cannot manage heavy ones. The key is to show up in some form, even if your effort is smaller than usual. A writer who cannot manage a full chapter can still write a single paragraph. A runner who feels too tired for a long workout can still jog for 10 minutes. A student who is too busy for a full study session can still review a single page of notes. These small acts protect the habit from breaking, keeping the wheels turning until you can accelerate again. Consider a potter who practiced shaping clay each evening after work. Over time, the act became second nature. His hands moved almost without conscious thought, responding instinctively to the feel of the spinning clay. His skill improved steadily, and his creations grew more refined. 1 month, he took a week off for travel, thinking it would be easy to resume when he returned. But the first night back at the wheel felt strange. The clay resisted him in ways he had not felt in months. His touch was less precise, and he struggled to regain the rhythm he had once taken for granted. Frustrated, he realized that a single week away had cost him far more than a single week's progress. He had lost not just time, but the momentum that had made his work feel effortless. From then on, he vowed never to let the wheel sit idle for more than a day, even if all he had time for was a few minutes of shaping. Momentum is precious. Protect it, because keeping it alive is far easier than starting over. 13, your future self is shaped by today's choices. Many people imagine their future as something that will simply happen to them, as if life will unfold naturally and they will arrive at the person they want to become without deliberate effort. They think of their future self as a distant version of themselves who will somehow be wiser, stronger, and more capable, regardless of what they do now. This belief allows them to delay action in the present. They tell themselves they will start saving money later, take care of their health later, learn important skills later. They assume there will be more time, more energy, and more motivation in the future. They believe their future self will have the discipline to make the right decisions, even if their present self does not. But your future self is built from the habits you practice today. Every choice you make now, every action you take or avoid, becomes a brick in the foundation of the person you will become. You cannot expect to build a strong structure from weak materials. If you spend years practicing procrastination, avoidance, and inconsistency, you will not suddenly wake up one day disciplined and determined. The truth is, the future you hope for must be created deliberately in the present. You must live today in a way that matches the life you want to have tomorrow. The small, seemingly insignificant decisions you make each day determine the trajectory of your life. Skipping one workout, spending one unnecessary purchase, or wasting one evening might seem harmless. But these choices add up over time, shaping your habits and defining your identity. Likewise, taking a small positive action today, even one that feels too small to matter, builds the momentum that will carry you toward your goals. You cannot delegate your dreams to your future self and expect them to be fulfilled automatically. Your future self has no more time, energy, or willpower than you do now. In fact, they may have less, depending on how you live today. Your health, finances, relationships, and skills are all the result of consistent patterns, not sudden changes. Imagine two farmers planting seeds in their fields. The first plants a few seeds each day, consistently, without fail. The second waits for a perfect day with perfect weather, telling himself he will plant everything at once when the time is right. Weeks pass. The first farmer's seeds sprout and grow, benefiting from the early start and the steady care he provides. The second farmer finally has a good day for planting, but the season is already half over. Even if he works hard from that point forward, he cannot catch up to the growth the first farmer has achieved. Your life works the same way. The earlier and more consistently you plant the seeds of the habits you want, the more time they have to grow into the results you desire. Waiting for a future version of yourself to suddenly become the person you want to be is like waiting for a harvest without ever planting. If you want your future self to be healthy, start eating well and exercising today. If you want your future self to be financially free, start saving and investing today. If you want your future self to be skilled and knowledgeable, start learning and practicing today. The most powerful thing you can do for your future is to take responsibility for it now. 14, action creates clarity. Many people hesitate to begin because they are unsure of the perfect path. They want to know exactly how everything will work out before they take the first step. They search for certainty in books, courses, and endless research, hoping to find a clear map that will guide them without risk of wrong turns. This desire for clarity is natural. No one wants to waste time or effort on a path that leads nowhere. But the truth is, the map you seek is drawn as you walk. The details of your journey cannot be fully revealed from the starting point. You can only see the next step or two, and the rest becomes clear through movement, not sitting still. When you act, you gain real-world feedback. You discover what works and what does not in your specific situation. You find opportunities you never knew existed and obstacles you could not have predicted. You learn which skills you need to develop and which resources are essential. Each action sharpens your understanding, making the next step more obvious. Without action, your thinking remains hypothetical. You can spend months imagining how something might work, only to find that reality is different in ways you never considered. Plans made in stillness are like sketches of a landscape you have never visited. They may be detailed, but they are also guesses. Clarity is not the requirement for action. It is the reward. The decision to start is what transforms uncertainty into knowledge. Even wrong turns teach you something valuable. narrowing your options and pointing you toward a better path. Consider a young merchant who wanted to sell goods in the city market. He spent months trying to decide what products would be most profitable. He interviewed other traders, read about market trends, and made lists of possible items to sell. Every option seemed risky in some way. One was too expensive to source. Another was already sold by many others. A third required special skills he was unsure he could learn. While he hesitated, another merchant set up a simple stall selling only one inexpensive product. This second merchant quickly learned that his original product was not as popular as he had hoped. But in the process, he discovered a related item that customers asked for repeatedly. Within weeks, he had switched his focus entirely, and business was thriving. The first merchant was still researching. Action had given the second merchant the information, and clarity the first was still searching for. The difference was not intelligence or talent, but movement. When you take a step forward, the fog ahead begins to lift. You cannot see the entire path, but you can see far enough to keep moving. Step by step, the route unfolds. Waiting for the fog to clear before you move will keep you frozen in place, but walking into it reveals the way. 15, the habit of starting is more important than the size of the start. Many people believe they must begin with a grand effort to make real progress. They wait until they have enough time, energy, and resources to take massive action. They imagine that only a big, dramatic start will have the power to change their lives. This belief causes endless delay. Life rarely provides perfect conditions for a large beginning. There is always some reason to wait. A busy schedule, unfinished preparation, a lack of confidence. The longer you wait for ideal circumstances, the more likely you are to begin never at all. Small beginnings may seem unimpressive, but they have a hidden strength. They are easier to start, easier to repeat, and easier to sustain. The act of starting, no matter how small, creates a pattern of behavior. Each time you start, you reinforce the identity of someone who takes action rather than waiting. This identity shift is powerful. Once you see yourself as a person who starts, you become more willing to begin again the next day, and the day after that. The habit of starting keeps momentum alive, making it easier to build larger efforts over time. A small start also removes the mental resistance that can accompany big goals. The idea of writing a book may feel overwhelming, but writing one paragraph feels manageable. The thought of running a marathon may be intimidating, but walking around the block feels simple. The goal of saving thousands of dollars may seem distant, but putting aside a few coins today feels easy. Each small start is a seed. You may not see results immediately, but you have planted something that can grow. Over time, these seeds accumulate and their effects compound. A few words each day become chapters, a few steps become miles, and a few coins become savings. Consider a young man who wanted to learn the art of calligraphy. He admired the beautiful scripts he saw in books, but the skill seemed far beyond his reach. He told himself he would begin practicing when he had several hours free and the perfect set of tools. Weeks passed, then months, and he had still not begun. One day, an older calligrapher noticed his interest and handed him a single sheet of paper and a simple pen. "Write one letter," the master said. The young man hesitated. This was not the grand beginning he had imagined, but he traced a single letter on the page. The next day, he wrote 2 letters. The day after, he wrote 3. Soon, he was filling pages with flowing lines and curves. Months later, his skill had grown beyond what he once thought possible, all because he started small and kept starting. A small start is still a start, and starting is what changes everything. 16, discomfort is the doorway to growth. Most people seek comfort in their daily lives. They arrange their routines to avoid difficulty, pain, and uncertainty. They choose familiar paths, safe decisions, and predictable outcomes. Comfort feels pleasant in the moment, but over time it limits development. Growth, by its very nature, requires stepping into situations where you feel unprepared, uncertain, or challenged. These moments stretch your abilities, force you to adapt, and reveal strengths you did not know you possessed. Without discomfort, you remain within the limits of your current capabilities. The mind and body adapt to stress when it is applied in manageable doses. Muscles grow stronger when they are pushed beyond their usual limits. Skills improve when they are practiced in situations slightly beyond your comfort zone. Confidence develops when you face situations that once intimidated you and realize you can handle them. Avoiding discomfort prevents these adaptations. You remain capable only of what you can already do easily. You never discover the deeper reserves of strength, creativity, and resilience that challenges can reveal. Discomfort also sharpens focus. When the stakes are real and the situation is unfamiliar, your attention heightens. You notice details you would normally overlook. You think more creatively because the usual solutions may not apply. This state of heightened awareness often produces breakthroughs that comfort never would. Consider an apprentice blacksmith who had mastered the basics of forging simple tools. He worked quickly and confidently, producing pieces of consistent quality. His mentor, seeing his progress, assigned him a task he had never attempted, forging a complex blade design with multiple curves and a balanced weight. At first, the apprentice felt overwhelmed. The new design required techniques he had not yet perfected. The metal resisted him in unfamiliar ways. His first attempts were uneven and awkward. He grew frustrated, wishing he could return to the comfortable work he had mastered. But he persisted. Each day, he improved slightly. He learned to adjust the heat, alter his hammer strikes, and balance the blade's shape more precisely. The discomfort of the task forced him to develop new skills and refine his existing ones. Weeks later, he completed the blade. It was the finest work he had ever produced, not despite the discomfort, but because of it. The challenge had stretched him beyond his previous limits, and in doing so, it had expanded what he was capable of. If you seek growth, you must make peace with discomfort. Not all at once, but in steady doses that push you forward without breaking you. Each time you choose the uncomfortable path, you open the door to a stronger, wiser, and more capable version of yourself. Many believe their success depends solely on inner qualities: discipline, motivation, resilience. They imagine that if they can just develop enough willpower, they will be able to achieve their goals regardless of their surroundings. This belief puts all responsibility on the individual, ignoring the powerful influence of environment, your surroundings, the people you spend time with, the spaces you work in, the tools you have at hand either pull you forward or hold you back. A supportive environment makes desired actions easier and undesired actions harder. A harmful environment does the opposite, tempting you toward distraction and making your goals feel distant. Even the strongest self-control can be worn down when constantly fighting against friction. If you keep your phone beside you while trying to write, you will eventually check it. If your kitchen is filled with unhealthy snacks, you will eventually eat them. If your social circle dismisses your ambitions, you will eventually question them yourself. On the other hand, when you design your environment to encourage the behaviors you want, success begins to feel natural. A clutter-free workspace invites focus. A gym bag placed by the door makes exercise harder to skip. Surrounding yourself with people who take action inspires you to match their pace. The principle is simple. Make good habits the path of least resistance and bad habits the path of greatest resistance. Reduce the energy it takes to do what you want and increase the effort it takes to do what you don't want. Picture a young man who dreamed of learning the guitar but struggled to practice consistently. He kept the instrument in its case, tucked away in the back of a closet. Practice required dragging it out, finding a pick, tuning it, and setting up a chair. The friction was small, but enough to keep him from starting most days. One afternoon, he decided to change his environment. He placed the guitar on a stand in the middle of his living room. A pick rested on top, and the strings were already tuned. Now, every time he walked past, the instrument was ready, silently inviting him to play. He began picking it up for just a few minutes at a time. The short sessions added up, and soon he was playing daily without forcing himself to do so. Your environment is always shaping your actions, either intentionally or by default. If you want to change your results, start by changing what surrounds you. Many people think the key to productivity is squeezing more tasks into each day. They obsess over schedules, calendars, and to-do lists, believing that managing time is the ultimate skill. But time is fixed. Everyone has the same 24 hours. The real difference between achievement and burnout lies in how you manage your energy within that time. When you have energy, even a short period can be incredibly productive. When you are drained, hours can pass with little to show for them. This is why two people with identical schedules can produce vastly different results. One works in bursts of focus and power. The other drags through the day exhausted. Your body and mind operate in cycles. There are moments when you are naturally sharp, creative, and motivated, and moments when you slow down and need recovery. Working against these cycles, forcing deep concentration when you are mentally depleted, leads to frustration and poor results. Instead of asking, how can I fit more in? Ask, how can I work with my natural energy? Align your most important tasks with your peak energy hours and use lower energy periods for lighter work or rest. Protect your energy by caring for your body. Sleep well, eat to fuel, move often, and take purposeful breaks. Imagine a writer who believed more hours at the desk meant more progress. He forced himself to write for 8 hours a day, but found his words dull and ideas lifeless after the first few hours. Eventually, he tried a different approach, writing for 2 focused hours each morning, when his mind felt sharpest, and using the rest of the day for reading, walks, and light editing. The quality of his work skyrocketed, and despite spending fewer hours writing, he produced more publishable material. Time is the container. Energy is the fuel. If you fill your days with the right energy at the right moments, you'll achieve more with less struggle. Many believe the outcome of their day is determined by how much they plan or how disciplined they feel in the morning. But often, it's not the whole morning that matters. It's the first 5 minutes after you wake up. Those first moments set your mental direction. If you start by scrolling through negative news or mindless social media, your mind becomes reactive and scattered. If you begin with a purposeful action, you create momentum toward focus and productivity. Your brain wakes up like a ship leaving harbor. The initial steering determines the course. Small actions in the first 5 minutes can either point you toward distraction or toward meaningful progress. The principle is simple. Anchor your morning with one intentional act that reflects the kind of day you want to have. It doesn't need to be grand. It just needs to be deliberate. This could be drinking a glass of water, making your bed, writing down your top priority, stretching, or reading something uplifting. Picture a man who struggled to stick to his goals. Each morning he would check his phone before getting out of bed. By the time he stood up, his mind was already consumed with messages, notifications, and other people's problems. One day, he decided on a new rule. For the first 5 minutes, no phone, only a simple task that supported his bigger goals. He began by making his bed and writing down one important thing he wanted to accomplish that day. Soon, he noticed a shift. He felt calmer, clearer, and more in control of his time. 5 minutes may seem small, but it's the hinge that can swing the entire day in your favor. Many people stall on their goals, not because they lack ambition, but because they make the process too complicated. They believe success requires elaborate systems, perfect tools, or advanced strategies. In chasing complexity, they delay the simple actions that actually create progress. Complexity feels impressive. It makes us feel like we are doing serious work when we design color-coded plans, buy specialized equipment, or learn advanced techniques before starting. But complexity is also heavy. It adds friction, increases decision fatigue, and makes it harder to begin. Simplicity, on the other hand, removes excuses. When the next step is obvious and easy to take, action becomes natural. You don't need the perfect pen to start writing. Any pen will do. You don't need the most advanced software to begin your project. A basic version is enough. You don't need the complete 10-step program before exercising. A walk around the block will start building the habit. Imagine a woman who wanted to start a home workout routine. She spent weeks researching programs, comparing equipment, and creating detailed schedules. But she hadn't done a single workout. Frustrated, she decided to strip it down to the simplest form. Every morning, she would do 10 push-ups and 10 squats before breakfast. It took less than 2 minutes, but it got her moving. As the habit stuck, she naturally added more exercises, eventually building a full routine, all because she started simple. The more you simplify, the more you start. The more you start, the more you progress. Progress doesn't come from perfect complexity. It comes from imperfect simplicity done consistently.